A full plan is everything. I mean, it's looking at income, expenses, debt, assets, the way you're investing, and it's looking at that every year and mapping out those goals that you want. And we're sort of placing those goals along that timeline and saying, here's where children might happen, here's where a home purchase might happen, maybe a cottage is a goal in the future. And here's what retirement, this is my ideal retirement date, or financial independence, or whatever you want to have happen. And so let's see what that looks like. And how do we get there in the best way possible? I hate it when I see a bank graph and it's got that constant rate of return. Like, that doesn't happen. That never happens. Like, how are you showing somebody's retirement? It's got this great build up and this nice drawdown. I'm like, that's not reality. Things happen. So what's the scenario and what do we do? And, we need to talk about that, is what happens if investment returns are flat for 10 years.
This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Owen Winkelmolen wants you to talk to someone, anyone, before you make any investment decisions. Ideally, it would be someone in the personal finance realm, a coach like me, or a financial planner or advisor. But please just talk to someone, because if you do, you might save yourself from making the huge financial mistake Owen made in his late 20s. You'll have to listen to the episode to find out exactly what happened. But let's just say it was a bad enough experience that Owen decided to start learning as much as he could about personal finance, which ultimately led to the creation of his company, PlanEasy.ca. Owen joined me in the studio in Hamilton to tell his personal finance story.
I don't know if it's my earliest money memory, but it's my most vivid for sure. So when you open a bank account as a kid and you have that experience, you go to the bank, you get the booklet and you get all that sort of stuff. But that wasn't even the thing that was impactful for me. It was the interest rate.
Oh, so you remember what it was?
I remember the interest
how old
rate.
Were you?
So I was probably 6 or 8 at the time. I can't remember exactly, but fairly young. And you have a bit of money from birthdays and whatever that
it was in
doing
cash,
some chores
and
in
now
cash.
You're bringing it in.
So your parents take you and you go open your bank account, and it's this whole experience. And I think Royal Bank at the time gave you $5 as well. So as a kid, you're like, sweet, like $5.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the bank account; it was the interest rate, because. And this is going to date me a little bit, but the interest rate at the time was like 4 or 6%.
Okay.
Compounded monthly.
Oh,
and
nice.
6 or 8-year-old me didn't realize what compounded monthly meant.
Sure.
I thought that meant that every month you're getting 6 or 8%.
Yeah.
So for the first month, it was really funny. I was at home, 8-year-old me on my calculator
you did the
saying,
calculations.
I said, $110 or whatever I had in there at 1.06.
Yeah.
Repeat. I'm like, I am going to be filthy rich.
I'm going to be so rich.
That's right. So that was my first big money memory of thinking like, this is amazing. Like, why is everybody not doing this?
So you realize the power of compound interest a little bit.
Totally by accident.
Totally by accident, and a little bit wrong, of course.
Totally wrong. So 30 days later, I go to update my bank book, and I'm thinking like, this is great. I'm going to have $6 in there or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly.
And it ends up being like, 60 cents,
like
1/10 or 1/12 of that amount. And then it hits home. I'm like, it's 6% per year. But they just give it to you every month. That's the compounded monthly piece.
But it's a good point, though. It's like, why do we present things in such a confusing way?
Well, probably so you get tricked like that. Right?
Yeah. Well, but why? Like, why is it so important for banks to trick us? Right? It's like, why don't you just tell me what I'm going to get every month?
Sure, that's right. Just say it's 30 cents or 60 cents. Yeah.
Just
don't say 6% compounded. Yeah.
Say it's a 1/4%. Whatever for whatever period it is.
That's right. That's right. Well,
or say annually. Right?
You can say annually.
And why are we compounding things monthly?
Yeah, and then daily, and making it very confusing. So 6 or 8-year-old me, I was very confused by that.
Yeah, of course.
For the first 30 days, and I thought, I'm going to be insanely wealthy, and I'm going to keep saving, and so that was my first big money experience, is understanding that compound interest is completely by accident is this amazing thing.
Yeah.
And then having this huge letdown 30 days later when, it's not quite what I thought. Still really great.
Still nice to have money.
Still nice to have money, and still nice to have a compound, but it's 1/12 of how powerful I thought it was. Still really cool.
And it's going to take a while to get to that.
It's going to take longer.
$6.
That's right. That's right. It's going to take longer, but it's still pretty neat.
And so did that impact how you continued to save?
I think it did. It didn't, I didn't all of a sudden want to save a huge amount of money, but I think always in the back of my head, I had this understanding of what saving meant.
Yeah.
And if you could save and if you could put money in the bank or, investments in the future, right? It had this powerful compounding effect that it would make money for you.
It'll grow.
And
yeah.
I like that they presented it that way because it did sort of, it made me believe it was bigger than it was, but it really got me hooked. And sort of by accident, I came across that, compounding interest and how powerful it can be. But
did one of your parents explain?
No.
Did they read it?
They didn't
did you
notice.
Just read it? How did you know even?
They probably
looked
had
it
it on a
up?
pamphlet or something.
Okay, so
right?
they gave you some kind of document.
Yeah, they give you some documentation, and they probably say, you're going to get interest every month, and it's, it's this much, and it's compounded monthly. And
I wish all kids were as engaged as you. And you have kids now.
I have kids now. Yeah, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old.
So have either of them crossed this path?
We haven't done the opening bank accounts yet. We talk about credit cards, because they see us use credit cards at the grocery checkout. Yeah. And, they want to swipe it, right? So they want to, now that you can tap it, they want to do that.
Yeah.
And you have to explain, what that means.
Yeah,
what that means, that this is money and we're, mommy and daddy are going to pay for that later. We're going to get a bill and we're going to pay that, using the money we earn. It's not just this magic thing where you swipe a piece of plastic and you get stuff at the
It does seem like magic, though.
It does seem like magic. And to for me, a 6-year-old, compound interest felt like magic. And to them, you don't also want to get them in that situation where they don't fully understand.
So did you just slip compound interest into the story time?
Not yet, but I've got a little side project, which is the bankofmomanddad.ca. And it is a compound interest, a virtual bank account for parents to set up with their children.
Okay.
And so you can set the interest rate. And maybe that's because of my experience, but I thought, how neat would it be if a parent could, instead of paying 2%, on a Royal Bank, bank account that they have today or less, what if they could give their kids 12% per year or 20% per year?
Sure.
Give them, at least while they're young and they have $20 in that account, let them see the compounding happen.
More engaging.
Yeah. And you get to see a couple pennies every day, right? When it's 20% on $20, you get to see a couple pennies every day, and that's kind of neat.
So you're actually making happen what you wanted to happen.
Sort of. I want parents to do that for their children.
So what is it that does this?
So it's a very simple app. It's just the beta, and it's really a side project. I thought it would be fun to set this up. But I think the idea is really neat. I think the experience of having them really see compound interest and how it works, and a couple pennies every day, and then let parents talk about that, right? So have that start the conversation. And I think 20% is a neat number because that just happens to be what credit cards are, right? So you can say, if this works in reverse,
comparison.
You can have to pay a couple pennies a day. So it opens up a couple conversations with children.
Yeah. Do you have that quote about compound interest in your head? If it works for you or works against you, it could do either
so much good or so much harm.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Because like you just said, it could, if you're 20% down, that's terrible. 20% on the positive and the savings would be amazing, but it never works that way. Not right now.
No, but you can do that for your kid, right? When it's $100 in the account or $20.
That's great.
Yeah,
and then explain to them when they're 18 that so now you're gonna not
actually
see
two.
It's actually you have to pay the bank these days
a little bit
to keep the money in.
That's
there.
right. Yeah, but at least they understand how it works, and if they do get into debt, they really appreciate what that means on the other side as well.
Well, what I really want to do is get into a huge conversation about the money mammals and talk to you about that, but we'll talk about that later. I want to get back to you. So you know about compound interest, and you obviously know enough to know about numbers, and you seem to be pretty good with numbers.
Yeah, I like numbers.
So you're paying attention to this savings as you go, or no?
A little bit, but what really I remember. The other thing that I really remember being a kid is reading the business section of the newspaper.
You did? What, at 6 or 8? Or?
Probably a little bit older than that. A little bit older than that.
Yeah.
But I always used to get up, fairly early before my parents. And we had this little, gas, heater in our house. Mostly it was wood stove, right? That's how we heated our house back in the day. And But there was this little gas heater. So I would sit in front of that, read the paper every morning. I would read the business section.
Like a 75-year-old man?
A little bit, yeah. Maybe I've got an old soul. So that was me at like maybe 10 or 12 for half an hour in the morning. I'd be flipping through the newspaper and kind of reading these business section, and I just found it so fascinating. So that was the other piece that sort of propelled me, I guess, a little bit down the path that I'm on now.
Yeah, so you're from like 10 to 12 or something. What are you reading about? Like, are companies you like, or just learning about how business works?
Just in general, like, they're short articles, like they're not super in depth. And, it was fairly accessible. I probably didn't understand half of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I was flipping through, and I would read the comics as well. Don't get me wrong. But the business section really stuck with me.
I mean, I can relate too. I don't know why some of us are interested in how businesses work, and I guess would you be looking at things like stock charts and that too?
I did find that interesting. I think the articles on the business, and my parents had their own business, own business,
yes,
and so they were doing that, and I saw them being entrepreneurial and going through. It's difficult and it takes a lot of work, and I think that just got me really in tune to understanding how this all works.
Did they talk to you about their business?
We saw
in terms of finances or anything like that? No. So that was all just kept.
That was all. Yeah, we never saw that as children, but because they worked in the house, conversations at the dinner table. They'd be working after dinner. My mother did most of the office work, sort of handling the administration and, checks and employees and all that sort of stuff. My dad was out working, so they have a tree nursery, so they're out in the field, and he's, managing the employees and making sure everything gets done. We just saw a lot of that, either by osmosis.
You knew it was a business.
We knew it was a business. We knew what was happening. We didn't know the numbers, but.
Jumping ahead, did you get involved in the business at all later?
No.
Never do any of
my brothers, my two younger brothers are in the process of taking over.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So it's already, there's a plan.
There's a plan in place. It's a family business, so it does,
And your parents are retiring?
They are in the process of retiring.
Right now. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And this sounds like a big nursery.
It is now, yeah. It's quite. They have 600 plus acres.
Okay, that's a lot.
They started with 10 in the late 70s.
Yeah.
So my parents immigrated from Holland in 75 or 76.
Okay. So your parents came over.
They came over.
Usually grandparents at our.
No.
You seem like you're a similar age as me. I'm 38.
Okay. Yeah. So 36. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So your parents came over.
So my parents came over. They met in BC in the early 70s. So my dad was in a van out in BC. So I'll let that paint the picture.
Down by the river.
And so, my dad's there with his friend, two Dutch guys. They're living in a van, doing, horticulture type work.
Okay.
My mom and her friend are in Penticton, I think.
Penticton, yeah.
And they're, they're living in a house doing their thing. And they came over to North America to have that experience.
They came separately?
Interesting. They meet there in BC, and it turns out they only live like 35 kilometers apart in Holland.
Oh,
and
man.
It's just that it's such a small space, and, there's a lot of different communities. You wouldn't have crossed paths necessarily.
Well, there's a lot of Dutch people in Canada. It's like they found the only other Dutch person or something. It's it's very popular, and I think it was especially, back then.
And
right?
that's why they came, is because they're, it was very popular to come here, and they wanted to start a farm, a tree nursery. You can't do that.
Did they both independently want to start a tree nursery? Because that's crazy.
I think they wanted. I think definitely it's my dad's side. Like he was in the horticulture school, and that was
okay. So he's very educated in this.
Very educated, and so they wanted. He wants to start a tree nursery, and however he convinced my mother to partake.
She got on the same page.
They're on the same page. They're doing this together.
Yeah,
but you can't do that in Holland. You can't do that in Europe because the land is just too expensive.
I see.
So they have this experience in Canada, and they say, let's go back.
Okay.
And so in 75, 76, they come back, they buy, the first piece of land. But the problem with growing trees is it takes 4, 5, 6 years.
It takes a long time, yeah.
So, those first years are tough, right? And they're trying to make the farm work and still work, jobs to pay the bills. So.
I hear you. We moved into a house in 84 in Timmins, Northern Ontario.
Yeah.
And there were trees planted along the back. And by the time I was a teenager, we got Christmas trees now.
Yeah.
They were pine trees.
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, we can just walk through the backyard and do
Yeah,
whatever.
it's amazing.
It's just on the side. It wasn't a business.
It just takes 10, 12
years.
years.
It just takes a long time.
That's right.
That's compound interest right there.
Yeah. So for me as when I was growing up, we
Yeah.
didn't have a lot because they were just starting their business, and
Of course.
the cycles are so long that, now they're doing really well, but those first 10, 15 years.
How does it work? Well, how are you making money in the first bit? Did they talk
that's
about
it.
that?
They worked other jobs.
They worked other jobs.
They worked other jobs,
Okay.
and they would work,
Wow.
holidays, weekends, evenings.
What foresight to or what patience, I guess they would have.
And
your dad knew
stubbornness
about
maybe
this,
a bit. Yeah.
but he knew that it would turn into this. And was there any talk about building a legacy? Is that you said your brothers?
Yeah. So they, sort of, I guess 10, 15 years ago, they started to realize that now it's the time, to start transitioning.
Yeah.
And it was never really a big interest for me. I worked on the farm ever since I was young.
Okay, so you've always
the
whole family.
Maybe that the whole family, we would spend summers. They would be working, we would be in the field with them.
Yeah.
When we were younger, we were just playing, doing whatever.
Sure.
And then, we actually started working as well. They would pay us
chores.
$2 an hour.
Yeah, okay.
And we'd be out there
real
working.
money.
They would hire students, and they'd have summer students, and so we'd be side by side. We'd be working with them.
I was going to ask about your first job, and so that's probably...
That was my first job. A little bit of child labor, but...
It's okay if it's your kid, right?
Seems to be. Seems to be.
I don't know the laws about that.
I'm not... It's all gray. I didn't ask.
Let's just... we'll move past this topic.
That's right. That's right.
But no, they gave you a little bit of money. Let's call it an allowance, actually.
Yeah.
Probably because I'm guessing you didn't get any other kind of allowance if you got...
We had a quarter.
Okay.
A quarter per week.
A quarter.
That's it. I don't know if that was a lot. We felt it was
We're
great.
the same age, so a quarter sounds like nothing to me.
It wasn't a ton. You could buy penny candies. That's when penny candies still existed.
Yeah, they still had that.
Yeah.
Well, they still do now, but it's what? Is it quarter candy now?
Yeah, you can buy one piece of candy.
What do you do with your kids? Do they get...
We haven't done that yet.
No,
we haven't gotten quite...
still young.
Yeah, they're still too young. They have a piggy bank, and we, put a quarter in there once in a while. When Opa and Oma came over, my parents... my dad will give them a quarter and they'll run over to the bank, piggy bank, and put it in.
Nice.
So.
Okay, so they have that. So they understand, because I've had this conversation about is physical money still a thing, and are we wasting our time teaching our kids what coins and bills are if they're just going to be using credit and debit?
I think it's important. I think they need to know how that works in the physical.
Sure. And
you can see it and feel it and touch it, and it makes it real. But there is a whole second dynamic, which is this virtual money.
Which is what you talked to them about already with the tap.
Because they already see it. They already experience it.
Yeah.
Where I wouldn't have necessarily experienced that.
No.
At least I don't remember as a kid.
No, because
seeing my parents pay with credit card, it just...
Well, my dad always had cash on him, so I can say that. Credit cards, I think at that time... were more for big purchases or things you needed to, like hotels and credit card. And rental cars.
Right. So it was mostly cash.
But now it makes so much more sense to not carry cash.
Yeah.
Well, because it's heavy and I don't know.
Yeah, you pay by your phone, right? So now
it's ubiquitous. That's why everybody takes in Canada, you can use tap everywhere.
That's right.
And in Australia too.
Yeah.
Australia's great for that.
Yeah.
The United States, no way.
Not as good.
No, I tapped at a Panera Bread in South Carolina, I think. The guy's eyes almost flew out of his head. He's like, you can't do it. What?
Amazing.
No, it doesn't work. What did you just do?
Yeah.
How did you? It says approved.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine a world without tap anymore.
I know.
Yeah. It's just so convenient.
Are we spoiled? Is there, do you see a negative, spoiler alert, you work in the financial space. Do you see this as a negative at all in terms of spending?
I don't think so.
Convenience?
Perhaps. I mean, it's easier to spend for sure, but is that a negative thing? I think if you've already had those challenges, with cash, it's still going to be a challenge regardless of the medium. Maybe it makes it a bit easier, but my wife, when she has cash, she spends it faster than credit.
Okay.
And so I don't think it's necessarily the medium of how you transact.
Interesting.
It's more like your habits. I think it's, a lot of personal finance is driven by habit. Probably habits that you picked up from your parents or friends or,
Yeah.
That's what really drives what you're purchasing. Is like every time you walk by that coffee shop, you're buying a coffee or a donut or something.
So the medium won't change that.
It maybe makes it a bit easier.
Sure.
Because maybe if you didn't have cash, you wouldn't have gone in, and now you have tap, you can quickly do that. But I think the triggers and the habits, like, they're still existing there. And so unless you're addressing that, I think you're still going to have a challenge if that's what you have a challenge with.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get back to that. So back to you. You're working for basically, you're a servant to your parents, free labor basically for them, and but you're getting your allowance of $2 an hour. Working after so you're in high school now?
So I worked for them until 16.
Okay.
Yeah. So from about 10 to 16. And then, I sort of wondered, okay, what sort of other jobs are out there? So I got a job at Canadian Tire in the garden center.
Well, they probably hired you because you had a farm experience.
Exactly. That's right. They're like, oh, this guy can work. He's been working since he's 10, and we can pay him minimum wage. I talked to his
dad. He takes $2.
That's right.
We'll give him $2.50.
I don't know if they checked my references or not. I never asked. So I got a job at Canadian Tire at 16 because I could drive at Brantford.
Okay. Yeah.
So, we were out in the country, so you had to drive to these sort of jobs, right?
Yeah.
So I'm 16, I got a car, I can drive to this job at Canadian Tire.
You're a grown-up.
Making minimum wage, getting $40 for a shift, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Or whatever that was.
But you're making your own money now.
Making my own money.
Not taking it from the family. I always thought that was interesting because I used to work for my parents at my dad's dental office doing janitorial work. And I'm like, I'm taking money from my parents.
Yeah.
Isn't it better that we all take money from somebody else? Right? My mom worked for my dad as well. So it's like it's all coming from my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think at least for me personally, I always felt a lot of pressure working for my parents because it was physical work and you would be working on a crew, of 3, 4, 5, 6 people doing a specific job, suckering or, pruning trees or whatever that needed to be. And I always felt like I need to work hard because I'm being judged as like the owner's son.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be a thing. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that I can do as much or more. Right. So I actually felt the opposite. I felt like I'm working harder or as hard as everybody else because I need to prove that a little bit, right?
But you didn't stick with it, nor did you feel compelled to take over the business.
I think at one point it's 6 years. You're like, I need to change. I need to do a different job.
The Canadian Tire thing, yeah.
Yeah, I need to experience like what a different job is like because it's only been with my parents. And so you get a job at Canadian Tire where it's a bunch of kids working in a garden center.
Sure.
And it's this whole different world. Yeah. And there's not the same pressure, right? So there's a bit of, you're socializing at work.
Wow, that seems a lot easier for you.
It did. It felt a lot easier at the time.
You're making cash.
Yeah.
More money.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they increased it.
They did increase. Yeah. It didn't stay at $2 forever.
I don't know. Would your mama put you through payroll? Or did you just get...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
At a certain point. Once you had a social insurance number.
Yeah, we were always paid on the books.
Which now they get it from birth.
They do, yeah.
Baby Henry's got
That's right. Well, you have benefits and
number.
everything. So it's all tied together.
That's crazy.
I know.
He got his health card. He's got everything. He's got more things than a lot of people.
I don't know if it's they definitely encourage it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just did it because it was part of the 5-in-1.
That's right. Fill out all those papers.
Yeah. Great. Why not, right?
I know.
So Canadian Tire, how long did you work there?
Not really long. 12 months maybe.
Okay.
And then I heard you say janitor. So I became a janitor.
You did?
At a private school.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So there was a small private school out in the country, around where we live. And they had just started out and they were fairly small. Like they were growing as the grades, kind of expanded.
Yeah.
And so they were up to grade 5. So they had a small space and they were looking for somebody, high school student. And this was perfect. After school.
Go in, but like mopping everything. It's small, but was there like a gym or anything big like that?
They had a big open space, but yeah, it was 5 or 6 rooms at the time, and a big open space was like the gym / auditorium in the middle of the school. They had sort of custom built this building that could expand as they would grow.
Yeah, yeah.
And they would have me in for 2 hours after school. And I would mop the floors, clean the blackboards, put all the chairs on the desks, clean out all the garbage bins. And,
any horror stories? You got to have one.
Oh, yeah, because I was cleaning the bathrooms,
you pick one.
too. There's not even one.
Oh, wait, okay, you said bathrooms.
There's some awful things that happen with children in the bathroom. Awful things. Awful things.
Why does it always come down to poop of some kind?
It's just, that's the most memorable thing. It's just
it's
awful.
The worst thing we can imagine.
It's just the worst thing, especially when... Yeah, it's children.
Yeah.
So
wow.
So anyway,
and they're not even there. You can't even yell at them.
No. And they loved me. So that was an amazing place to work. The kindergarten kids would come up and hug me.
Oh, so you were there during school hours?
I would come at about 3:30 after high school.
Oh.
They're still getting on the bus and everything.
Yeah.
And so all of these kids knew me. And it's really funny because all of the janitor type stuff, like they thought I lived there.
Yeah,
you know, so it's those types of things where you're like, this is really funny.
You just took a nap somewhere else and came back to your home?
And especially the kindergartners, right? Because they didn't quite get the whole, this person's here for a couple hours to clean up in the evening, right? So they thought I lived there, but they would come over. I'd be carrying 2 trash bags. They'd come over and like 10 of them would give me a hug, right? And so it was a really fun place to work, and they gave me a lot of responsibility. I would close up the school. All the teachers would be gone.
Key holder.
Yeah. So I'm 17.
Sure.
And I'm the one closing this place up every night, right? So
it sounds like you're a pretty trustworthy kid.
I must have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're making cash for Canadian Tire and from this place, which you shifted over to. Yeah, I mean, being a janitor is not easy. We don't have to talk about that much, but it's just cleaning up, and it gives you perspective, right?
It does.
People make a mess, you clean it up. You at the end of the day are making the thing refreshed again. You're giving them a new day.
Yeah.
And people don't have to clean up their mess. I don't know. I feel like there's something there, but there's some kind of psychology going on. Like people should clean up their own mess, but we can move on from that. What are you doing with this money that you're making?
I'm saving it.
Like in what? And then that 4% bank account.
Yeah, basically. It wasn't. I think I had given my mom $1,000 to put into like a mutual fund.
Okay.
And
like under an RSP.
Yeah, or something like that. And I think I took it out 8 months later because nothing had happened, right? So it was one of those things. And I was going to university.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it just my time frame wasn't.
Well, you need that money.
I need that money. So
there's no time to put any money in a tax deferred account or even in a fund that's supposed to grow over decades.
No.
When you're a kid.
Not at that age.
Even in your early 20s, you need money you're saving up an emergency fund, or maybe you're even thinking about
you're
buying
getting
a house.
started. That's right.
Like, I mean, I like the idea of regular contributions to whatever tax deferred accounts, whenever you can.
Yeah.
But hopefully that's on top of the other things that you're doing. Because just to do it from now, you're locking in money you might need. You might even just want to go to Hawaii or something.
Yeah, I mean that. I had a trip to Europe, right? That was what I was spending my money on. Is those experiences and you going to university is an experience, and that takes a lot of money as well.
Yeah, so you're saving for that. Was it spending money, or were you saving for tuition? Or?
It was spending. It was a bit of spending money, a bit of both. So my parents covered tuition.
Nice.
And my plan, I went to McMaster.
Yeah.
And so my plan was to live at home and drive in. I had a cheap car.
Makes sense. How long is the commute?
So that would have been probably 30, 35 minutes.
Sure, that's nothing.
It's not bad.
That's easy.
But my mom said, no way.
Really?
Yeah. She's like, I will pay for you to go to to the residence.
You to have the experience.
That's right. And of course, after that, you can't possibly go back, right? So I'm I'm in the residence for the first year, and we meet all these people, and you want to get a student house together. It's a new world.
Yeah.
So now we're paying $300, $310, I think, for like a basement.
How many people?
A room in a basement. There were 6 of us in a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think after we left, they like converted it to be 8 or something like that. Just pack them in.
So, was there ever any thought, like, did your parents have this thought of, let's buy a house and rent it out? Did you guys ever talk about that wealth kind of building stuff, or they were focused on the business?
They were focused on the business,
sure.
That didn't come up. No,
it's not. Some people think about that, and it's like, wow, like good foresight, or now we have hindsight. Like that would have been a great idea.
It would have been in Hamilton, yeah.
But at this point, and you were probably in Westdale or right near the campus.
We were, yeah. And actually, I met my wife. We were friends before, so
okay.
we were in this house together. That's why I say we. So yeah.
Okay.
We were on King Street in Westdale, between the university and Westdale.
Oh yeah,
Village.
nice.
So beautiful spot.
Really nice area.
Beautiful, yeah. So great experience. So we were in the same place for the 3 years after the first year in residence.
So how are they paying for this? Did they save? Did they have, again, we're talking about foresight in this.
Yeah.
Did they have the foresight to save, or did they go into debt for this?
They weren't saving. I mean, at the beginning, we didn't have a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So they were putting everything back in the business.
Of course. Yeah.
And it wasn't really until I was in high school that things really started to pick up.
Okay.
So the money sort of came from that extra cash flow.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
now there was cash, but it wasn't savings.
In a way, they saved by building this business early.
Yeah.
That's there's so many parallels here. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
because you have this business idea, like we take blogging for an example, right? Everyone's like, I'm going to make money blogging, right? And okay, and then 6 months goes by, and they're like, where's my money?
That's right. It takes so long.
It takes a long time. But if you started blogging in say 2011, like Tom Drake, or 2005, like Jim Wang, who sold I've just listened to a podcast, who sold bargaineering.com for $3 million.
That's right. It just takes time.
Yeah.
You got to stick with it.
But you don't know. And
No.
so you have to have some either belief or patience or, for, say, Jim, for example, it was just a hobby on the side. He never expected it to make money. Your parents, though, but your dad, it was his dream.
They wanted to do this.
They wanted to do
this.
They
wanted a successful business for sure.
Of course. But, if they would have been like, we need this to make us money now, and if they didn't have the passion, they wouldn't have stuck with it.
The dedication, like I said, stubbornness, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
It does take a lot to get through those difficult times, and there's a lot of challenges with a farm, especially a tree farm. It takes a long time. You've got a lot of inventory sitting out there exposed to whatever can happen.
So many things can happen.
So many things can go wrong. I remember times that you have freezing rain is awful. Freezing rain, enough of that will pull down those branches, and now you have an awful looking tree, right? Maybe all the branches don't break, but it's now not attractive enough to sell. So I remember times where, my parents wouldn't sleep overnight because there was a freezing rain warning, and they couldn't do anything, but they would just be up watching, waiting, wondering what was going to happen because they've got 6 or 7 years worth of inventory built up out in that field.
Have you ever read the Little House on the Prairie books?
No, I haven't.
Because they're really upsetting when it comes to like exactly what you're saying. They're like, okay, the wheat's good. We're going to sell it at the market next week.
Yeah.
And then, wait, what's that swarm of grasshoppers doing? It's
right.
like, what? Farming is so precarious and unpredictable.
Yeah.
So what a stress to have. And just like they had trees were the product.
Trees were the product.
And it's not like it's a revolving crop or anything.
Yeah.
That's also stressful, of course, because especially if the grasshoppers.
No, there's no do-over
back.
Every year. It's you've got to commit for 5-6 years before you get something that's sellable.
Wow, I got to meet your parents someday because you got to have a specific type of personality to be able to deal with this.
To go through it,
right? Yeah. So now, knowing all of this, was that part of why you're like, I'm going to go? Well, what did you take in school?
I took engineering, physics, and management.
Okay.
So it was a dual degree. At Mac, you could do a 5th year and add business, and then all of your electives would be business courses.
You should add business to everything. Everybody should add business to all the things.
Yeah. And so I really enjoyed engineering, but as a career, especially what I was doing, it's very boring. You're doing research. You're stuck in a nuclear power plant.
You did it though. You did it for.
I didn't.
No, you didn't even do any
all.
engineering. So okay, so you do. You get your bachelor's.
I did both.
Degree.
Finished both.
Okay.
But said business
degree.
business was the what I wanted to focus on as a career. And I ended up getting hired by Labatt Breweries. They had a management trainee program.
Okay.
And so there was 24 of us that got hired at once. And I think that was the first big year that they did this.
Yeah.
And they wanted to bring people in and teach them the culture and, how they worked and right from the ground up, right?
So they came to Mac or you just applied?
They were all over.
Okay,
U of T and Queens and, I think it was there were some people from UBC. So all over the place, really intense hiring process, where you would go and sit in front of 3 or 4 of their VPs and they would be, 3-on-1, right? Sort of asking you questions and, it's like
that's intense.
Very intense, very intense. So really intense interview process. And, I was just lucky enough to get in.
But this goes back to your reading the business papers. You're like, this is awesome. Was that how you felt? Did you feel that way?
I did. I really enjoyed it. So I actually did some research on the beer industry before going into that interview because I'm like, I kind of want to know what's happening. And the beer industry's tough. It's very stagnant and, there's not a lot of growth. So I had a lot of points to talk about. And I think that, it was what they were, and only in hindsight did I know this, right? But the things that I was talking about are the things that they were talking about.
Oh,
and so it just sort of clicked. And I think that's what, put me over the edge a little bit is that.
Like, how do you know all this stuff?
That's right. They're like, do you know anybody? Like, are you like, do you have parents that work in the industry? No, like
Trees.
Yeah,
You're
they
like-
they grow trees. I just read some articles.
They like beer.
They do like
Yeah.
beer. Yeah, and it's nice to have a cold beer after working on that.
Sure.
farm.
And so I
Yeah.
guess that probably helps too. I was never a big beer drinker myself.
I'm not either anymore.
No, not anymore.
and even not really.
Well, we
that.
don't. What happened at Labatt? I don't.
Just too much. It was great the first few years. You're young.
Yeah.
You know, you're working for your beer industry.
How does it work? Do you get free beer?
Yeah.
Like what? When?
2 cases a month.
Really? They give you like vouchers or?
They used to. It used to be a voucher. You would go to the beer store.
Yeah.
Now it's a credit card, of course.
So you get 2 cases of beer a month. So that's what 48. So that's like a beer a day. Plus, on some days you have 2.
Yeah, I suppose. I never drank that
No,
much.
You didn't. So
I would give it away.
Give it to your parents.
Yeah. I would give it to my parents, to my friends, you know,
It's a good
6-packs. And yeah, so everybody, of course, loves that, right? You show up to a party, you've got a case of
You're
beer.
the beer guy.
You're the beer guy. Yeah.
Wow.
And you've got beer merch. They're giving away T-shirts and hats
course.
and all that sort of stuff.
I have a similar experience. I worked for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment
Yeah.
for 6 years.
so
And
you get, you know, that
tickets,
stuff floats around.
Leafs
Tickets.
tickets, because I'm not a sports fan, right? So Leafs tickets are like having gold, and would you like this bar of gold?
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
people would really enjoy it, and people who would enjoy it the most, right? So people who really like beer and
Yeah.
like free things, you
Yeah.
give them, and the merch.
You
people
would
who
share
wear
that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool, as a young person, a pretty cool place to work. And then
okay. How
it's
many
intense.
years? How long?
12 years.
You worked there for 12 years?
Yeah. In a variety of different roles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're
okay.
amazing at giving you opportunities. So
See, this is why I don't delve like deep down into somebody's story too much, because I like to say, "Wow, that's a long time."
it was a very long
But like,
time.
let's just skip over. I know everything about
and this
your
was from the
Labatt
first,
history.
like my first job,
yeah,
you know, in a corporate
right
setting,
out of university.
right out of university, and then you know every year and a half it would be in a different role,
Okay,
and they
so-
were very comfortable with that.
Yeah, and that you were obviously comfortable with that too.
Yeah, yeah.
You wanted
I'm
to learn
new
about
experience and keep sort of pushing and you know
Okay,
learn new things.
So you don't have to pay back money for school because your parents covered it. So you coming into this, you have consumer debt. Did you get into credit cards in university at all?
No,
Okay.
not in a bad way.
Okay.
Like not in a
Just in a like on I got
On a
$500
regular-
thing
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Okay, so you're coming out with no debt really, and you're making a nice salary at Labatt to start.
fairly good,
Okay, good enough.
good enough.
You're living where?
They for the first few months they would put you up because they're moving you around. They want you
Yeah.
to sort of experience.
You're
the
moving
different-
around location to location.
Location to
where,
location.
Like, where are the locations across Canada?
We did a few months in London and
Yeah.
Toronto.
London's the big headquarters.
That's
no?
right.
Yeah.
So they have their office in Toronto, and
Yeah,
then they have
okay.
you know the biggest brewery is
the
in
biggest
London.
brewery is in London.
That's
Okay,
right.
the head office is in Toronto.
So we had to learn, you know, how the beer is made, how it's brewed, you know, the science behind it. They sort of took us through all the basics of
You know
of
everything about beer,
Well,
don't
yeah,
you?
That was
Like
the
now,
purpose.
do you know now? Like, are you like, could you just
Ooh.
talk someone's ear off about beer, or
No.
you forgot it?
I think I've forgotten a lot of the.
Okay.
But if somebody were to talk about it, you know, it would all come.
Yeah,
flowing
of
back,
course.
probably.
That's
But yeah,
interesting.
I couldn't teach you how to brew beer at the
No.
moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was hoping for a course in brewing beer,
Yeah.
even though I stopped drinking 10
It is
years ago.
fascinating. It is.
But okay, so you're moving around. They put you up in some places, and
Yeah.
then eventually you're paying your own way.
yeah,
around,
so then
or-
you get your first job. Mine happened to be in London. I was a packaging manager, so I was managing a bottling line with a crew of unionized employees.
Sure.
And you know, we were putting out, I can't remember what it was, 900 bottles a minute.
Yeah.
You know, that was the rate of beer that was flowing
So-
out, and that was only 1 to 3 lines.
You're packaging manager, so that's like,
So like 23-year-old me
yeah.
is managing this group of unionized employees. You know, a lot
Some
of these
who have been in
guys.
the union for a while.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Okay.
in their 50s, some
Sure.
getting close to retirement.
They're making
And-
way more money than you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Way more.
And you know, it's a repetitive job, right? So
It is, yeah.
they're doing the same thing every day, and they do rotate a little bit. Some of the guys were great. Some of the guys were a little bit tough.
Okay.
Especially, you know, being a little bit younger. So you got to get to know them. And so that was that was a year I spent there in that packaging line.
You're working in a factory and then an office and all of this different stuff.
All over.
You get the whole experience working for a big company like that. Because I worked for companies that didn't really make anything, right? So
Yeah.
you don't get that experience. And you also, like, the closest I got maybe was working with event staff at the ACC,
Okay.
right? And then people who are working their
Yeah.
part-time,
So you
right?
see how the show.
They were union, and
Yeah.
lots of unions, right? But, you know, you're working, like, you're managing these guys?
managing them. Yeah. So we're figuring out problems. Like it never works perfectly, right? So you've got all these machines and
so many moving parts,
and so many things break, and you need to keep that line going because there's very little inventory being held. I mean, that's the goal, is that
it's food.
Beer's coming off the line and it's going to the customer. It's going to the beer store.
That's a lot of pressure. So how did it feel like pressure to you?
A little bit. You had targets.
You're in your 20s.
Yeah, it was exciting.
So like 23, you said, to 35. So when did you leave Labatt?
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your money in this time. So you're making decent money. You're now in Toronto, did you say?
Yeah, so I moved in with my my girlfriend at the time, now wife.
Yeah.
She had a small apartment, Ronceville sort of area.
Not cheap.
So it was a very small place.
Yeah.
And I moved in with her. And that wasn't the long-term plan. So I sort of tricked her. I think she said I tricked her a little bit.
Okay.
So I was looking for a house. So I had been saving my money these last couple years.
So making salary, you don't have any debts.
Don't have debt, not major debt, and so I'm, putting away a fairly good amount every month. So I've got, it's 2008 now. I've got about $30,000 to put down on a down payment.
All right.
But it's Toronto, right? So I'm looking at places where $30,000 could be a down payment.
Wait, what year did you just say?
2008.
Okay, let's continue the story.
Yeah. So we, my wife, girlfriend at the time, is coming with me to look at these places.
Yeah.
And because it's just me first looking, she kind of sees this and says, oh, goodness, like if I'm moving in, if she's thinking, if I'm going to move into this place with this guy, I want it to be nice. I don't want it to be, this.
She needs to be part of this decision.
She wants to be a part of it. So we sort of have that discussion. She's like, okay, I'm part of this now. We're going to pool our money.
Sort of an early commitment conversation.
Like I said, she says I tricked her a bit into this, right? Tricked her a little bit. It was never the goal.
That's a good, talk about buying a house together and see where it goes. Yeah.
So we did things a little bit backwards in that sense.
All right.
And we started looking for a house together. And she's always been a great saver. So she graduated. She paid a lot of her university herself, but she graduated with money in the bank.
Yeah.
She worked at a daycare the entire time. So she's a great saver, good budgeter. So she had money as well. So she says,
you both have money to put
let's
into
pool this together and let's get that starter house together in Toronto.
Yeah.
And so that, we talk about big money moments.
Sure.
This is like my second big money moment, is not buying that house, but it happened a little bit earlier. So it's 2008.
Yeah.
August, September. And I've got $30,000 in the bank, earning no interest.
Yeah.
Sort of frustrating.
Just in the bank?
Just in the bank.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's an emergency fund. Do you know
anything
about
payment.
money at this point? Are you
not as much as I do now, for sure.
Yeah.
I knew a little bit about money, but not enough.
No, you're not in the personal finance space in your head.
No. And I make probably the biggest money mistake of my life.
Sure.
I invest that $30,000 down payment.
Oh no.
And not only do I invest it, so like that's one mistake, right? So you don't invest your down payment. That's a short term.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
Exactly. Everybody knows that. So mistake number one. Mistake number two, I invested 100% in stocks.
No.
Remember, it's 2008, right?
Like individual stocks?
Yeah. And mistake number three, it was all one stock.
No, what stock?
RIM.
Oh,
BlackBerry.
Oh, man.
Awful. And not literally like 3 weeks after me making this investment, does BlackBerry just plummet.
Wow.
And I lost $16,000.
Oh, no. Like half of it, basically.
Half of it.
Well, more than half, I guess.
And let me tell you, that feeling, I can feel it right now.
Yeah.
I can feel that feeling. It was the most awful feeling I have ever felt in my life. And it wasn't just the fact that I lost the money, but I felt it was embarrassing, right? Like I had to explain to my girlfriend, like, this is what happened. I was ashamed. It was embarrassing. I was ashamed.
Because what's the timeline here? You had just started talking about pulling the down payment?
Yeah. We're looking at houses together.
And it was already invested at this point? Like
No. So we looked for a while.
You decide.
We looked for a while.
What was the decision? What
I think it was, I got antsy. I got,
It's just sitting there.
It's just sitting there.
Somebody said,
yeah, and I don't know when we're going to buy
money.
Yeah, maybe. I don't even think
because you're still looking. Yeah,
we're still looking.
How long
and
take.
It's buying a starter house in Toronto. It takes a long time. There was this was 2007, 2008, you still got bidding
bidding
wars.
processes.
That's right. We hadn't entered that
It's
great
horrible.
recession yet. It's awful.
Yeah.
And so we felt discouraged. Who knows if this is going to happen?
That's
So
right.
then,
Okay.
fall of 2008, I invest this money.
Ah.
The bottom falls out of the market, not literally like 4 weeks
No.
later. And $16,000 has just disappeared.
Oh.
Just disappeared. And you wouldn't, like, I can't even convey to you how that felt, because it just felt more than awful. Like, literally, I wanted to vomit, like, for a week. It was just this physical, I feel sick.
I always I feel like people don't know what it feels to go through my gambling addiction that I went through and to win and lose 20,000 in a day. But I feel like this comes pretty close, and it might even be worse. I don't know, because I was already used to gambling losses. You're not used to losing anything.
No.
So,
I don't know. I know what I felt. I know
win.
it was I know it was like nothing I've ever felt before.
Wow.
And so then it took me a few days, but I tell my girlfriend,
Yeah.
now wife,
Yeah.
and she's like, it's fine. So, it's not
It's
good.
not fine.
It's not good.
Not fine for you. I mean, okay, it's not like you went into debt.
No.
First of all, like that there's a lot of positives here.
Yeah.
But did this change your brain? Like, did this change the
100%.
way you look? So, okay, so
100%.
you're like, somebody said put money in RIM all in one stock. I'm not going to read any personal finance books. And now?
That was the thing that started it.
Right after that, of course.
Right
yeah.
after
So-
that.
So, right
Because now I say, like, what have I done? Like,
what have I done? Yeah.
Mistakes on mistakes on mistakes.
Of course.
I can't ever do this again.
No.
So now I'm like, I need to educate myself so that this never, I don't want to ever feel that feeling again, right?
Why do we have to go through these big things?
Those shocks.
Why
yeah.
can't we just be like, invest 10% of my income? Fantastic. For 40 years. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
It's that experience.
Let's do that.
You need the experience.
You have to go through something, right?
Yeah. So
I'm
unfortunately,
sorry that
my
happened.
my
Yeah.
experience was minus 16,000.
Yes. But, it's not, you can start over. And
Yeah.
in a way, yours is the best version of this, because you didn't go into a bunch of debt. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
But you got the effect of having something really bad happen. And
That's right.
Losing $16,000 is really bad. I'm not diminishing it at all.
No.
I'm just saying, like, you didn't, lose a limb or anything,
No. It was a very valuable lesson.
Yeah, it was
worth way more than 16,000.
Right?
now. Way more.
Yeah.
So we did end up buying a house in I think we put in the offer in like February, March 2009, and we sort of lucked out a bit
the
because
prices went down.
a little bit, yeah. And at
Okay.
least there wasn't any bidding wars at the time.
Yeah.
So we sort of squeaked in there, and then things started to go back up.
Smart.
And, I had this great lesson, and so I'm starting to educate myself.
Yeah.
And this is the start of like that 10-year bull market.
Sure.
And so that's why I say, like, yeah, it was an expensive lesson, but I feel like over the course of the last 10 years, I've only benefited. I benefited way more than that $16,000 initially cost me, just because I put in that work. I learned, about passive index investing.
So are you reading?
Intelligent Investor. That was probably one of the first,
Yeah.
and so that had a good balance of, active versus passive. It had that conversation.
Yes.
Back and forth. A couple Warren Buffett books, Bernstein, I can't remember which one. He's got a few of them. So it was all these investing
So you're
books.
already having a business background. Now you're getting the personal finance
Went through that
education.
awful experience.
And you're reading, and are you blogging? When do you start blogging, or are you writing about this? Does that happen?
No. I didn't get into that till much later.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's later. So this is 2009.
Yes.
Let's say.
Yes.
And now you still have your paycheck from Labatt coming in.
Yeah.
And what are you doing with that money now?
So we're saving it.
Are you paying the mortgage?
We're paying
Yeah,
the mortgage.
yeah,
So
of course.
that's the other big thing. We started investing it. We're doing things still separately. We haven't gotten married yet. We got married in May, 2010.
Okay.
So that happens. And so one thing is I started a joke with my wife. She, again, amazing budgeter.
Yeah.
That's always been her thing, not necessarily my thing. And she starts, she's been really good at budgeting. So I start bugging her about, how do we pay off this debt? Like, you make us a budget so we can pay off this mortgage.
Sure.
And it started as a joke, and then it started to sort of become more real, right?
Okay.
So, we get a raise at work, or, there's a bonus that comes in. Maybe we didn't expect it. And what are we going to do with that money? Like, TFSA, RSP,
Yeah.
but there's a little bit left over. We put it against the mortgage.
Okay.
And that started, we got this itch of like, this is
This
cool.
feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is low risk. I've been through this super awful experience just recently, and paying off the mortgage is super low risk. So let's make a plan. Let's get rid of that mortgage. And she's all on board because she hates debt.
Okay.
And so that was like 2010, 11 is we decide to pay off that mortgage, and we make a plan, build a little amortization schedule, and start playing around with it.
How long was the amortization?
7 years was the first.
Okay.
Was the first iteration, and this was like taking everything.
That
We
was
would
reaching.
we were reaching.
That was your
we would be
stretch goal.
liquidating TFSAs.
Sure.
My wife was at CIBC at the time. They got shares. They would get share matching. We would be taking all of her shares and liquidating and put them against them. But 7 years, it could be gone.
Okay.
And
so
so
you
that
knew the possibility.
We knew the possibility, and that really got us motivated.
Imagine owning your home outright in Toronto.
In Toronto.
What, do you you don't have to say any details, but what area?
We were in the East End, so we were in past the nice part of the Danforth.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's
so
where we looked
not
too.
Leslieville, not the Danforth. We bought not one of the older houses. They had torn down like an old warehouse, and so there was these townhouses, semi-detached from the 1980s.
Okay, yeah.
Really solid, but for some reason nobody wanted them, and so we got in there.
Okay.
And at still a fairly good price at the time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so you figure out if we just basically extreme frugality. What is it? What does John call it? Guerrilla frugality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna pay this mortgage down, and you decided the 7 years, or you decided on that.
Well, that's the way the numbers worked.
Okay.
That's
and then you
that's,
tried.
Then we tried.
Okay.
And we started making changes. So that's when I started biking to work. So we started making these sort of lifestyle changes.
Really, like everything. Or this is a Sean Cooper story. Right?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Not that extreme. Not that extreme. But it was along those lines of, let's start. We had this goal, and it was our first big, real taste of like a big personal finance goal.
Yeah.
And we started to make these lifestyle changes. So, I was biking to work. We were starting to, cook all of our own food. You ordered in a lot before. And you went out to a lot of restaurants. We started really making a budget. Simple, basic stuff, but really like dialing back.
And you had a goal, and that was the main thing, right?
Very
it wasn't
specific.
a budget for just being
and
good citizens. It was a budget to achieve this goal.
And that was the difference.
Yeah.
It was this very specific goal that we were both motivated by. So we were both on the exact same page, and we were both trying to outdo each other on how we could save.
Oh, you gamified it for yourself.
We totally did.
Wow. So how'd it go?
It went really well. We paid it off in 2014.
Okay.
It took us 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, how? You got raises and stuff that you didn't anticipate?
That was it.
Okay.
That was a little
side husles?
Not really.
No,
It was
really?
more the we didn't really put a lot of raises in there. We did liquidate our TFSAs.
Yeah, okay.
So
Sure.
that we benefited from that because we had been investing in our TFSA.
Yeah.
And then the plan was always, if it gets to a certain amount,
Then we're going to use it.
then we're going to pull it out.
No
and
tax consequences.
no tax
which is
consequence.
nice.
So that's what we did. And we ended up paying off our mortgage 2 days before our first daughter was born.
Wow.
Yeah. So May 19th, and our daughter was born on May 21st. And
in 2014.
In 2014.
Wow. Yeah. Because 5 years old.
5
now.
years. Yeah.
In soon.
Yeah.
Just coming up in May.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And now you're like,
Well, now we need to replenish the TFSAs.
yeah. So you're working on that. But so you've had 5 years, but you've had kids.
Yeah.
But you're living. Well, wait. You don't live in Toronto.
Not anymore.
No. Okay. So
No.
you pay for this house and then you sell it, or
A
you
few
still
years.
have it?
A few years after. No, we sold it.
Okay.
We moved to London. My wife's family's from London.
Yeah.
So, now with children, we have our second daughter was born, and it was at that time we always had a plan to move back to London, to that area, to be close to the family. And it's also closer for my family because they're in Hamilton, between Brantford and Hamilton. So this was a lifestyle change we wanted to make, and it just seemed like it was the right time.
Okay. So at what point then during this whole process is the spark in your head like, I want to do something in personal finance myself?
Yeah, it was, I had been learning a lot.
Yeah.
But the real spark was I came across Sandy Martin from Spring
Sure.
Financial Planning.
Yeah.
And I think that was,
Also the Because Money podcast.
Because
Great
so the
podcast.
Because Money podcast, and she's out there a lot on Twitter, in blogs, and so I came across her in 2013, 2014, and she was this ex-banker, that had transitioned into fee-for-service financial planning.
Yeah,
so
she's a big advocate of that.
And was very vocal about it. And so I came across her, on some personal finance blog, and it clicked for me. I said, this is how financial services should work.
Yeah.
It should be advice only. It should be, it should be completely aligned with the client, and there shouldn't be any question about, what's being sold or, are there any ulterior motives?
So is it, just explain it just a little bit. So fee for service, are there two different ways of doing this, like a flat fee or a percentage of your assets, or no, or neither?
So I think the definition, fee only is the words that people usually use when there's an AUM, an assets under management fee. So that's fee only because it's a fee based on the assets.
They don't get paid for like by the mutual fund company. Like
that's right.
So it's
that's
a difference.
Right. It's a little bit clear.
Model.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's assets under management.
And that's fee only.
Okay.
Fee for service is really, there's none of that.
Flat fee.
It's just a flat fee.
Or an hourly.
It's hourly, or a package rate.
But it's not based on I believe you $1 million or $10 million or $100.
You could have 100,000 of debt, and it doesn't matter. You're
getting
all
advice.
Exactly. So it's very democratic, and it's still expensive, and that's sort of what with my business now. I want to make it a little bit less expensive, more accessible.
Yeah. So as I say, typically at this point. We're about, maybe an hour in. Now you can tell the name of your business.
That's right. So I started it's basically a financial planning startup. So it's PlanEasy.ca.
Okay.
And the goal is to make fee-for-service financial planning, so advice-only financial planning, easier, more accessible, and less expensive.
That's right.
And so that's online, that's more automated, and it's very targeted towards, not with a net worth of $1 million or $2 million.
That's right.
We can do that.
Just starting out when you need
just
it the
starting
most,
out,
right?
When you have a little bit of money, or when you're a bit uncertain, or
when somebody, sorry to pick on you, but when somebody comes to you and says, "I have $30,000, where should I put it?" Right? Because it's my first time doing it.
Let's talk about your goals.
Right?
Yeah.
If you are making the thing that you wish that
I had,
you would have really benefited from.
Exactly.
Not that your money wouldn't have gone down a little bit, because it was just
of course
a
it
market crash.
Yeah.
However, if
not my down payment.
No, they would have never told you to put your down payment away. That's kind of the first. Yeah. So like you just said, what are your goals? You would have said, "Oh, I want to save for down payment." They're like, "There's a high interest savings account.
Here's how
put
you
it
do
in
it."
there. Yeah,
that's right.
And it's so simple when you think back, right? And I mean, I'm glad to see that you're smiling.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want to do is make you upset about this. I know what it's like to have bad things happen in the past and to talk about it, just jokingly, or because we were not in that place anymore, right? And it's important to move on and learn from it, and then use our experience to help others. So you're doing that. Yeah,
it's shaped what I'm doing now and who I am. And
so when did you start this? When did you start? When did PlanEasy come to be? I guess?
2 years ago it started.
Yeah.
And it's evolving. And so at the moment we offer one-on-one fee-for-service financial plans for $1,000.
Okay.
But the goal is to make that even less expensive.
Sure.
So something that is in the $500, $250 range that maybe is more automated, and you're not necessarily talking to a person unless you want to or need to.
Yeah.
But that you can do the sort of thing that I would have benefited from, like planning out your goals. I have this amount of money. Here are my goals. Let's map and optimize this and figure out where the best way to get there.
And this is, are you a certified financial planner, or how does it work?
Yes. Yeah. So I've got my FPSC level 1. So I did my, that when I saw Sandy and saw her on those blogs, that sort of got things started. So I did my financial planning certificate at Ryerson.
Sure.
While I was in Toronto.
Nice.
Did that at night school for 2 years, 2014 to 2016.
Okay, nice.
I write the FPSC level 1, so that's the first exam.
Stage. Yeah.
So did that 2017.
You got to be working with an advisor, right?
You can be independent.
Oh,
and
no,
so
that's good.
Yeah, so you can be independent. You just have to provide more proof. So then I did the CFP exam last year, and so now it's just about, keeping that business kind of growing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you did the exam, and so does that you said at FPSC level 1.
Yes.
Does that mean there's another level?
So you need 3 years of work experience. So after, within a few months, we're going to have the CFP all finished, and then I can apply for that.
Yeah, because you don't have to be a certified planner to make a plan.
No.
And what do you think about that? I mean, this is the I don't make full plans like you would, for example.
Yeah.
I know the plot process. I got this little thing called registered retirement consultant.
Yeah.
That I could get without being a CFP.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I don't care about designations, right?
Yeah.
I see like this is what you're doing, right? For
That's
me,
right.
I'm very casual coach.
Yeah.
I'm pointing in the right direction. I can help you make a little plan. If they want a big plan, they go to you.
That's right.
Right? If they want even a bigger plan, they go to somebody else.
Yeah.
But like often people at the beginning don't need more than what. Well, you're going to give them a full cycle.
We're gonna give every client a full plan, no matter what.
Which is what? Let's talk about what's in a full plan.
A full plan is everything. I mean, it's looking at income, expenses, debt, assets. The way you're investing, and it's looking at that every year and mapping out those goals that you want. And we're sort of placing those goals along that timeline and saying, here's where children might happen. Here's where a home purchase might happen.
Yeah.
Maybe a cottage is a goal in the future. And here's what retirement, this is my ideal retirement date, or financial independence, or whatever,
like that word better.
Whatever that word is, and whatever you want to have happen.
I want to retire at 47. I want to be able to stop working.
Exactly. In my mid 40s or, early 50s.
I think I might buy a house.
Yeah.
Let's put that in.
And so let's see what that looks like, and how do we get there in the best way possible.
Did you make your own software, or are you using software?
So I use, at the core of my plans, I use Snap projections.
Yeah, I like Snap.
It's very lightweight.
I used to have Snap
very powerful
when I was thinking of doing full plans.
Yeah.
Very powerful stuff. You can put in various events and stuff that happen as you go, right?
That's right. So it's very easy.
Yeah, and a plan is malleable, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be really, really flexible so that when somebody says, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore, you're like, well, we made that plan set in stone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can't change anything. Nobody wants to hear that.
And you can have a couple scenarios, right? So you can look at, house purchase or no, children a little bit later.
Yeah.
What if I retire a little bit earlier? Can I do part-time work?
And I think what people forget about financial planning software is that it's very country specific.
Yes.
And because I've had people in the States say, hey, try my, retirement calculator. And I'm like,
no.
Like, what? Like, this is Canada. We have things called the two things, two major things called the Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security.
That's right.
And we don't have the same thing as other countries. So if you're using a calculator,
it doesn't translate.
It doesn't, because it does make a big difference when you start getting checks from the government.
Huge
maybe
difference.
you won't get checks from the government. You need to have that in the software to figure it out.
And you need to know what that check, how much that check is going to be.
That's right.
Because it's worth a lot. Like those CPP and OAS payments represent a big chunk of people's retirement income. So if you can't figure out exactly how much somebody's going to get, how can you build a retirement plan? I mean, it's all guesswork after that.
Like, even just to sorry to interrupt, even if there's a situation they give you, like, I want a financial independence at 40, and that's still 20 at least minimum years before they start getting CPP benefits.
Yeah.
You still want to know that at 60, hey, you know what? You're going to need less income because your CPP benefits are going to kick in.
Absolutely.
And at 65, your OAS is going to kick in. Even if they don't care about that stuff and they're not counting on it, you need to have it in there as a scenario.
And it won't be a lot of CPP because they've not worked for it.
If they've not worked.
That's
yes.
right.
But
I still want to know exactly what it's going to be.
You want to know how much it's going to be.
Yeah.
And
based on what they contributed and what, maybe part-time income in the future.
It's not complete without that. And I bring it up because I think it's a really big thing, and people think they can just plug things into an Excel spreadsheet. And you can get a general idea.
Close.
You can get close. But the government benefits, whether you believe in them or not, they can make a big difference. Yeah. And, my parents are at retirement age at this point. And so that is something that, they are now getting those benefits. Yeah. And
makes a big difference.
If they weren't getting those benefits, they'd have to rejig this or that, right? It's something that's it's real. Who knows? Like, they do plan out for 75 years the CPP when they invest their stuff.
Oh, it's one of the best pension plans in the world.
It is. So it's like a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't know that it'll be around." Well, I mean,
you're
it'll
making
be here
things
in 75 years.
Yeah.
So incorporate that.
That's right. That's right. If you don't include CPP in your calculations, you're just making everything else more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And why? Like, there's an opportunity cost to saving that money today. And if we can anticipate CPP, you can spend a bit more. You can make different choices. So let's make sure it's as accurate as possible. And that's the other, CPP and OAS are good, but a lot of seniors are getting, GIS, guaranteed income supplement.
They don't make enough.
Yeah, a third of seniors in Canada get that. And so that's where I need to add to SNAP projections. So that's the core of the plan, but I calculate benefits, child benefits. So you're going to see you've got your Canada Child Benefit. Yeah. If you have 2, 3, 4 children, that's significant. And many people don't realize there are clawbacks based on your income.
That's right.
And if you contribute to an RSP, your income is lower according to the government. So you can get more from your Canada Child Benefit if you make that TFSA RSP contribution in the right way.
So you can do things that take advantage of all these tax rules that work for whatever the individual needs, right? And that's something that you just can't figure out yourself.
It's insane.
The tax things are one of the huge benefits. The talking about your goals and figuring out where to put money and that kind of thing, that's good too. The main thing, and this is what Carl Richards says, and I'm sure you've read the one-page financial plan or whatever, anything by Carl Richards. It's like you're the thing between me and stupid, the thing that you needed. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's what a coach is the basic sort of person to do that. Hey, should I put all this money? And it's like, I can't tell you where to put your money, but don't do that.
That's right.
I could have said,
let me worry about the details.
I could have said very specifically, like, oh, it's for a down payment. No, that's fine. I mean, let's send you over to somebody who can legally tell you where to put that money specifically.
That's right.
But wow, I feel like I've just contributed a lot of value before that stage. Yeah. It's like you need somebody. Even financial advisors and planners need somebody because
it's too complex.
Emotions.
Yeah,
right?
It's there's a lot of things happening, and you need to work to understand what those goals are, but then there are implications one way or the other, depending on, all of these programs that exist. So not only are you figuring out what they want and when they want it, but also how that jives with, tax rates, government benefits, even the way that you're drawing down assets matters, right? So that's another thing that needs to be layered on is, I hate it when I see a bank graph and it's got that constant rate of return. Like, that doesn't happen. That never happens. Like, how are you showing somebody's retirement? It's got this great build up and this nice drawdown. I'm like, that's not reality.
No.
So
things happen.
So what's the scenario and what do we do? And, we need to talk about that is what happens if investment returns are flat for 10 years.
Let's look at different scenarios.
Let's look at all those scenarios.
And you can make different scenarios with financial planning software.
Fast.
Which is nice.
Which is so nice.
Yes. And, of course, that costs money.
It does.
On a monthly, which is why you need to charge money. Just one of the reasons why you need to charge money, because you have all the tools, right? You have the tools, you have the knowledge, you have the skills. You specifically have the experience that you're drawing from that people can relate to, which is also very important. So this is great. So you go from, trees, trees to beer, to big mistake. But you bought the house. That always works out for people in hindsight, when they bought that house a long time ago. And you don't know any of this stuff when you're in it though, right? Like you're just taking a chance. Everybody's taking a chance. There's risk in everything, but if you just build your money, save up your money, and then talk to somebody to try to get ideas and do what works for you.
And then you've got flexibility and options. Right. And
exactly. No rash decisions. I think that's probably the best advice you can give to anybody. Like, just pause. Yeah. Pause for a sec.
And go ask for some help.
Exactly. And that wasn't specifically picking on you. It's everybody does that. Like we think so much about what type of milk we're going to buy at the grocery store, and then we go ahead and just be like, oh, whatever you say, banker, use that mutual fund. What's a fee? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I don't know. Like, nothing goes through people's heads. That's what I think. It's just they don't want to think about it. Yeah. And
it's not easy. The information's not readily available.
As somebody said recently, it's like it is confusing in general because finances are confusing, but there are things that the system does to make it intentionally confusing as well.
100%.
And so that just, you're trying to, so PlanEasy, obviously trying to make it easier.
Yeah.
Right.
Extremely easy. we want to take care of all that math, and we really just want to talk about, what's the goal and what do you want and how do we get there?
That's what it is, right?
That's what it's all about.
Okay, so PlanEasy.ca.
PlanEasy.ca.
And they can go on there, they can send you a message.
Yeah, they can start a plan, and we'll get in touch. And
do they start for free?
Yeah.
And
well, we can start. We have a conversation.
Start it up, and no obligation.
We want to make sure it's a good fit.
Yeah,
so we work with a specific type of client, and even if we're not a good fit, we'll find somebody.
Yeah, that's right.
That is a good fit.
Maybe you got tons of assets around the world or something. Maybe that's
you've got an incorporated business.
Yeah,
you've got a spouse which is a U.S. citizen. Like those are all fairly complex things.
Anomalous things
require a real. Yeah.
There are people, and I'm thinking of a few right now who are just great at that kind of stuff.
That's right.
They charge a little bit more,
in that.
Of course.
But
you're going to pay more for specialty.
You're going to get their expertise,
right? Yeah. And exactly. And awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Owen.
Yeah, thanks for
coming to the studio.
Yeah, appreciate it.
New baby.
Beautiful.
You know what it's like.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right.
Get some sleep.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. And that's episode 78. I don't usually do takeaways at the end of a show, but there's a pretty clear one here. If you're saving money for anything short-term, like a down payment for a house, don't invest it in any product that carries risk. Even the most conservative exchange-traded fund portfolios still move up and down with the market. And if you need money in a few months, even if it only takes less than a year to recover from a market downturn, you'll regret investing that money, and it'll affect your plans. And then the most important part is when you do invest your money, never invest it all in one company. That company could go bankrupt tomorrow and never recover. The market as a whole generally recovers from downturns, but every day there are companies whose stock declines and never recovers. Diversify your investments. Hopefully you all know this already, but I had to make it clear, just in case. If this was your first time tuning in, you should check out my 75th episode where I have 1-minute segments for each of the 74 episodes that came before. It's a quick way to find an episode that you might be interested in without listening to hours and hours of the show. If you're a regular listener, thanks so much for downloading the episodes every week. Another way you can support the podcast is by going to my Patreon site and becoming a patron. The link is at the end of the show notes in most podcast apps. Otherwise, just head to patreon.com/Bo Humphreys. That's Patreon. Patreon's a great tool to help creators get paid for their creations. I also have a Facebook group for the podcast. Head over to Facebook and search for The Personal Finance Show to join the group. Thanks again to Owen for sharing his big money mistake with the world. It's not easy to make mistakes and then tell people about it. That's it for this episode. I'll be back next week with consumer advocate, author, podcaster, and Toronto Star columnist Ellen Roseman.